Mm. All right, there we go. Welcome to the November 20th Cloud Event Serverless Working Group call. Still haven't heard from anybody yet, so I'm assuming it's probably just going to be you and um, Klaus, you and Clemens. So, Klaus, just let us know when you go from a maybe to a yes or a no, whenever you get that chance. Hold on a second. Oh, hey, Ben.
Hello, hello.
All right, let's jump into it. Oh, John reminded me, Thanksgiving is next week here in the US. Is there any objection to canceling the call next week?
No.
Yeah, I did think so. Okay. Um, so, oops. All right. All right. Before we jump into PRs and stuff, any other topics people want to add to the agenda? All right. Let's quickly fly through these PRs. Clemens, is there anything you'd like to talk about relative to this PR?
Mm, well, I th we didn't talk about this in this call yet, right? Did we? No.
No, not yet. No.
Yeah. So basically, what this is gives mostly the schema registry an overall or a better intro um, overview. What are schemas? What are schema references and how do we use them? Why do we need this at all? Kind of how do we use this in cloud events? Talk about versioning. Basically, this whole spec had lots of tech details, but it didn't really have any preamble and any explanation for its existence. So I added all of this, and then also I numbered the headings, and then the rest of it is like the technical pieces that follow at the bottom. I added some further explanations, but it's a pretty substantial overall. While in the essence, in the technical essence, nothing changes. So this is all just lots of extra pros
Yep.
because this spec was very, very light.
Yep.
And this has been reviewed by Lila and by Doug and by Klaus, and we think this is in substantially better shape than it was.
Yep. Okay. Does anybody want more time to review that? Does anybody object to approving then? Cool. Thank you, Clemens. Do you want to talk to this one?
Yes. So the um, the schema generator, we have an any type in our models, and any doesn't really exist in JSON schema, and we need to go and generate JSON schema for validation purposes. We also generate Avro schema, and so even though that's not actively used, it kind of proves that we can actually go and generate different schema. So that was kind of the point of that. And the schema generator didn't handle any correctly in either case. I ran across this trying to validate something with any, and now because the prior implementation was basically just equating any to object, which is false because it could be really any type. And so this year is this PR is kind of fixing this in a by omitting basically the type from JSON, from the JSON schema declaration, which is any in JSON schema, and then creating a generic, so-called generic type for Avro. So that's kind of making those changes to make any happen in both schema formats. This was an oversight before.
Yep. And just to be perfectly clear, this has nothing to do with the specs. This is all in the schema
No,
generator
this
stuff
is
too.
all just that we use the schema generator to generate our open API declarations and the document validation
Right.
schemas.
Yep. So just tooling changes.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody want more time to review this one? Any objection to approving? Cool. All right. Way old. So this PR started a long time ago. Um, so there were this PR for the most part focuses on sort of the error processing in our specs. Uh, there was a whole bunch of error messages that weren't quite worded right, so I did some wording changes there. We changed our error structure. Before it used to be, I believe type was there, title was there, and I think oh, a detail was there. So these three fields were always there before. Type is just a unique identifier, which is a URL to where the error is actually defined in the specification. That's why it's actually pointed to the spec and then the section with the flag name or the section with the error name. Title is a human readable version of the error message. And that's meant to be as short as possible. If you need, longer text or to go into more detail or hints about maybe how to fix it, things that are interesting but not necessarily critical to just see what went wrong, that's what details is for, to go into more detail if you really need it. But the most important thing is the title. That's why detail is optional, but title is required. So those were there before. Since then, over the last week or so, or 2 weeks, we added a couple of extra fields. Subject is the entity in which the error is targeted to, and this is optional. If it is pointing to like an entity in the registry, then this will be the relative URI to that entity itself. Not every error message necessarily has an entity associated with it. That's why this is optional. ARGs. We decided that the error messages themselves, when they're actually defined in the specs, there are some values in here that are substitutable. For example, the word collections here, which is the flag name, okay? Or here is actually the subject repeated in the error message because we didn't want people to have to look at the subject in all cases. We want to be able to see, we want to be able to treat this line of text as all they need to look at, right? They don't need to look at all the other fields to figure out what's going on. So that's why you'll see some things repeated. And they're substitutable in the original text. Well, if you have tooling that wants to do something programmatic with these error messages, having to parse these things out based upon this error message name or number is not necessarily always deterministic. So what we decided to do is to say, okay, anything that's substitutable from the original text, we produce this map called args. And you can see, and if you actually look at the spec definition of this message, you can see the word flags here or flag here. And that's where this thing comes from. So flag gets replaced with collections. And in the error text, you'll see the word subject here. And that's where that's where that came from. Okay, so this just allows for a little bit more programmatic processing of the error message if you want. A classic example is, let's say you want to translate this to another language, but the server doesn't support anything but English, but your client-side tooling does support it. This allows you to translate the bulk of the message into Japanese, Chinese, whatever language, and substitute in the words that hopefully don't necessarily need to be substitutable. I'm sorry, they don't need to be translated in the proper space in the message. And the reason it's a map instead of an array is because based upon the language, collections, for example, might come after schema groups. So that's why we actually gave these things names as instead of positional ordering. Okay, so that's what this is new. That's this new thing here. Instance is basically sort of like a transaction ID or correlation ID. Again, it's optional, but if the server has something to help debugging on the server side later, if the customer comes to you and says, hey, why am I getting this error message? What's going wrong? The server can now check its logs by looking for this unique identifier. Again, that's optional. And source is just the component or some identifier. It's just an opaque string, just a unique identifier that says where this error message was generated from. It could be the entire X registry, it could be a component in there, it could be a file with a line number. Completely up to the server to decide what it wants to return there. Again, between these two things, it's kind of there to help the server debug things if they need to, based upon what the client can give them. Okay. Any questions about that? Cool. The first pass through on the implementation side of things, I was using a very generic error message just called bad request, and the substitutable value in there was just this English string, and it became really kind of annoying having to use not being specific enough on the actual error message itself. For example, bad flag is kind of generic. So what we decided to do is find all the uses of these very generic error messages and replace them with ones that are more specific without being implementation specific. And that gives you a little bit more detail in terms of what's going on. And it's not just this generic, hey, an error happened. And then the substitutable text is always in English because it's from the code. Okay. So we added a whole bunch of new error messages for that. And finally, we decided to add a HTTP header that gets returned on all responses, including errors. It is optional, so the server either doesn't, if they don't have it or they don't want to do it, they don't have to, but it's there to make life easier for people. So it returns a link to the root of the registry. This is the standard link format for all HTTP header link type things, with a type or rel value of, or relationship value of X registry root. This way, when a client is processing the response message, it doesn't have to have information about the request message to know the URL of the base of the registry, nor does it have to guess based upon the data it got back. So, for example, a lot of times you could take the self URL, remove the XID portion that ends it, and that could give you the base URL. But that's kind of error prone and not necessarily great. So we decided just to give them a direct URL to the root if the if the client side processing the response needs it. And again, it is optional. Okay, any questions about any of these? Any objection to approving? Or anybody want more time? Cool, thank you. And John, thank you for your review. I appreciate that. All right. I don't think James is on the call, right? No, he's not. Okay, so James has a PR in our repo to extend the proprietary specs document to point to a cloud event flat buffers specification, which he included, which is in the Google flat buffers repo. So this, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a pointer to it. However, I don't think we can merge this yet because his PR that actually creates this doc has not been approved yet, which is over here. I was wondering, did anybody get a chance to look at this thing yet? I know I left some comments in there, but I don't see anybody else commenting yet.
I haven't. It's the sort of thing I would. I don't know. I haven't read the difference between protocol buffers and flat buffers yet. Um, but I can try to look in the next 2 weeks, like
That'd be
before
great.
we next meet.
Yes, that'd be great. Everything kind of looks okay to me. I don't think there's anything major in there, but I would like another set of eyes if possible. So thank you, John. And I don't think we're in a strong rush because, like I said, I don't think we can merge this PR until this one gets merged, and it may not ever get merged, so we never know. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. So when you guys get a chance, no huge hurry, but it'd be nice if we could at least maybe before the end of the year, let them know that we think it looks okay, aside from just me. Okay? Any questions, comments about that? Cool. Thank y'all. All right, Ben, anything you want to mention relative to your signing
Yeah, yeah.
stuff?
I did believe I pushed up some commits for people to look at. So the big thing is security did give kind of a semi okay with the array idea. What I mean by semi okay is they want it like just flushed out more because we kind of gave them just like a high level proposal just to make sure we didn't want to like go all in, but without with them, kind of like picking it apart. So they said that it seems like it would work and it'd be okay, but they wanted to do a little bit of research. I forgot on two specific types of attacks, which they slipped my mind. I'm sorry, but once they confirm that those two if those aren't issues, we can go ahead and send the Ray implementation upstream, and you guys should be able to support extended attributes, any sort of attributes in any sort of order as well. And you weren't here 2 weeks ago when I was last here, John, but I just wanted to highlight that the idea with unmarshal or deserialization, being, like worse for security doesn't mean you can't do it for the SDKs. For security, they want the ideal world where you're just looking at the payload. but they said that it's okay, or that it was okay to first deserialize and then generate the signature. So the piping idea that I was like mentioning before, but you said that you just like just passed it into um to a reader, if you will, and it just like unmarshaled it as it got information or data. You should still be able to do that. But yeah, those are all the updates. So yeah, you should see, probably not next week because it's Thanksgiving, but probably like maybe in a few weeks here, the updates for the array. And that should hopefully answer all those questions. I'm still working out the high level what is it called? The high level like biscuit, where it's like, where you're able to like transfer, roll back signatures to the previous state and then keep verifying until you get to the end, basically. So I'll keep working on that, and that should probably come in around maybe the same time as I push up the extended attribute support of any amount. So just to let you all know.
Just to make sure I understand, because you mentioned two different things there. You
Yes.
mentioned the array stuff, and then this unraveling of things. The array stuff just means sort of a variable list of attributes that get signed, right?
Yes.
To cover extensions. Okay. And the second thing, that's that notion that I keep talking about, are sort of like nested signatures. So you can have middleware do signatures that on top
Yeah.
of a cloud event. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you. That sounds great. Does
Yeah.
anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay. Now,
We'll
I
have
don't
another
know how
look
many people. I'm
in
sorry.
update.
Go ahead, John.
I will have another look when it has been updated. Yeah.
That was going to be my next thing. I don't know how many people have had a chance to look at it. So, Ben, it may be good for you to let us know when you think this thing's like pretty much done, modulo any
Mhm.
typo type stuff, because a lot of people wait until the very end to give their feedback, and I don't want to ask them to keep doing reviews over and over. So let us know when you think it's pretty much done, and then I can really start nagging people to get their reviews done.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely let you all know.
Okay, cool. In the meantime, though, any questions for Ben today? Okay, cool. Thank you, Ben, for doing all that. Appreciate it. It does sound like
Yeah.
it's heading in a good direction, so that's all good.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Okay, that's it for the agenda, except for one last thing. Clemens, you mentioned you wanted to talk about some of the new work you've been doing relative to tooling stuff. Did you want to do that now or save it?
I want to do that now, just to make people aware of those things existing. Hang on.
Okay, you want to share your screen?
Yes, I will.
Oops, sorry, I almost ended the meeting. Hold on. That would not have been good. Hit the wrong button. Let me stop sharing. Okay, there you go.
Okay. The screen is number 4.
You have 4 separate monitors?
I have 4 separate monitors, yes.
Wow. Okay,
Do you see
we see it.
do you see CodeGen?
Yes, we
Do you
do.
see where I move my mouse? Yes.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I have four separate monitors, and Zoom is not very happy with the fact that I have so many monitors. Like the other windows are all is now spread across all the other screens.
Jeez.
So I have brought gifts this week. I brought actually last week and this week. I brought about 150,000 lines of code in 3 projects. There are, let's talk about the XR proxy first. The XR proxy, you've seen some of these things if you paid attention, but I also added something. So this XR proxy is a project which has several reverse proxy servers that are translating from the metadata models of all of these services, so Maven and NPM and NuGet and OCI container registries and PyPy, and now newly also the official MCP Model Context Protocol registry. And what those reverse proxy servers do is they basically attach to these live services and rewrite on the fly their metadata model into X registry models. So each of those projects has I'm going to pick NuGet, which is the .NET one. Each of them has a model, and the model is effectively taking the metadata structure that exists for kind of, in this case, inside a NuGet, and redeclares this effectively as a X registry model, including versioning and everything else. And then there's code in here, which is kind of here, which then kind of looks down at NuGet, uses the NuGet API to go and pull the data up, and then projects this out. And the way how this looks then in real life is like this. So you have this, and so there's a bridge. And what this bridge does is it can take a number of X registry servers and merge them into one. So you have these downstream servers, each of them kind of projects its own endpoint. But this bridge can go and look at, it's a universal reverse proxy effectively for X registry servers, and merges the models together, and then basically provides you access to all of the downstream servers in a flat view. So that's what you're looking at here. So we have these servers, and so we're looking at them through the bridge. And now we can go into, let's say, the Python registries, and you see that there's pypy.org as the top level group. So the group name, the group's type is Python registries. And then we only have one Python registry here. I mean, there could also be private Python registries. So we only have PyPy, but you could go and register private registries. And then there's a packages URL. And so here, these are the actual package names that come from there. And if I can go and just basically just pick one, I'm going to go and pick advertise. Then you get into a particular package, and then you have a versions URL, and the versions URL gives you the versions, and then you have the self URL, and that kind of gives you the details of all those things. And that's kind of a completely X registry conformant view of PyPy, which I find total fun just now that I'm doing this again for you guys. So, so if I go back to the root, and I'm going to do this with, let's say, .NET, you kind of get the same story here. You get the packages URL, and then you kind of get all your favorites. And let's go and do newtonsoft.json, which is the biggest, everybody's biggest. Oh, root not found. That's a little odd, weird. Gonna get the next package here, and that has then all the versions. You see the default version here in view, and then you see all the dependencies and the versions kind of all folded up, and each of them obviously has its own self that you can get to, and you kind of go and see all the details of it. So now you kind of see a NuGet projection of this. And then the same exists kind of for basically the whole structure exists for all the other services. So now you can go and get a metadata view effectively that is spanning all of these things, because navigating the JSON is a little is not quite as sexy. There's a second project that is the viewer, and this viewer is an Angular JavaScript app. Or TypeScript app that can be overlaid over any X registry API and creates a read-only navigation view. The thing that's missing in this project yet is the authorization authentication model. That's something to think about, how to go and integrate this, which means like for the underlying API, you probably need to have some authorization model. That's something that we kind of have scoped out. So once we have this, it needs to be integrated here. But this is kind of hosted inside the same app. It's now this X registry viewer, and the X registry viewer can look at multiple registries. So you kind of see here the endpoints registry comes from Doug's X registry soap hub, and there's others that are coming from the endpoint that I just showed you. So if I go to back to, let's say, the Python registries, You just kind of see now the same view. And that view is then using the pagination features that we have in the spec. So I can go and paginate basically through this and get to some packages that are probably a little bit more interesting. Could also go all the way to the end, and I can go and pick one of them. And this is all driven by the model. So this tool reads the model declarations and uses that to kind of find out about the types of the fields, and it basically projects the structure first and then kind of fills in the data. And so you can also dig into the version history of things. Now you can go and see all the details of that. So that's a generic viewer for all of this, and it also has a dark mode if you want to.
The most important feature.
Yes. And all these things. So that's basically in combination with any X registry conformant API. You can go and take the viewer and lay that on top of it. And the viewers also kind of, there's documentation for how you go and use it. It's Angular 19 mostly, because I've been yet too lazy to port it to 20, because that's a bit of a hike.
And Clemens, can you in the viewer, do you have something registered there for the X registry site itself?
I haven't put that in there, but it's working. I know it's not in this config, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think it'd be great to add that, because what I think is really cool is that this thing has no clue whether it's talking to a real API server,
correct,
your proxy thing, or just a static S3 kind of thing, which is kind of what we're hosting our X registry stuff on.
Correct.
And the fact that it's all metadata driven, and this thing has no clue what's going on, it just returns the data, and the user would never know the difference, that's cool to me.
Yeah. Where's the root? Where was the root for this on the site? Do you have that in there?
I think. Hold on. I think it's xregistry.io / hold on. xregistry.io / is it xreg? Yeah, /xreg. xregistry.io /xreg.
/xreg. Let's try it.
Okay.
It's worth trying. Okay. Yep.
Dude,
so
that's awesome.
Now it has access to the specs.
So for those of you who weren't paying attention to what I said, this is going to a website that's hosted in GitHub pages, okay? So it's basically a static website, which is basically the equivalent of like an S3 kind of bucket kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this thing has no clue that it's not real. It's not a real API server behind the scenes. And this is for those of you who have been paying attention to what we've been doing, a long time ago, we made it one of our goals to be able to support this thing, to support X registry being hosted in many different environments, not just through code with an API server, but also with something as simplistic as a simple file server, S3, that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what this is doing right here.
And the viewer understands the difference between document mode and structured mode. So this one here is a document mode registry. So it goes and loads the document and shows that to you.
Cool.
I've long said, I'm a backend plumber and I have nothing. I can't do UX, but this is not shabby. And I did this, right? The whole thing. I got help by the coding agents, but this is where we are. It's 2025. So that's that. And so this is something that I've also demoed before, CodeGen. That is the biggest project of them all, if that wasn't enough already as a demo. This is CodeGen. This is going to take, we have this all set up to actually publish some packages and containers, etc. It's going to take tomorrow to go and sell these pull requests and the few remaining issues that I have. But once I've settled those, then I'm going to go and push those packages. So this is a tool which is now called XRCG, the X Registry Code Generation CLI. And that's mostly because Doug has said, nah, this should not be the X Registry CLI, because I also have a CLI. And so we haven't really settled what the official CLI is. So this is now the Code Generation CLI. The Code Generation CLI is a project which has a CLI and also has a VS Code extension. The VS Code extension currently has a few dupes that it produces into the menu, but I'm going to show you that anyways. So when you want to go and you have an Xreg file in your project and you want to go and generate a Kafka producer based on this, you can go and right click then. If you have this installed, you can call generate code. You pick the language that you want. Let's say Java or C#. There will also be a Go option soonish. And so you see these dupes. That's basically just a script bug. And then you can go and pick whatever producer you want. I'm going to pick whatever C# Kafka producer. And then you need to have a project name. And then it's going to ask you for a destination. I'm going to make this ctemp. I already have a foo. Okay, we'll put this into ctemp and make this a foo 4. Okay, and select that as the output directory. I just realized I actually haven't tested this after renaming this to XCG. So now I'm praying that it actually works. There it goes. So and now it pops a new window, and what you get is out of the inkjet project, you now get the data classes for all of these schemas. So for these Avro schemas, with all the descriptions that are in the schema, so that all gets transferred. You get a data class that can go and self-serialize into both Avro and into JSON. It doesn't matter where you start. If you start with a JSON schema, you can still get the Avro support because there's an internal conversion that's happening. And this thing can go and deserialize itself from various kind of angles, from structured data from JSON, or it can also go and unzip. So it has internal zip support, and then it will go and figure out basically from the media type automatically which decoder it needs. It will go and deserialize itself. And then obviously also has a 2-byte array function, which does effectively the reverse. So if you tell it, I want to have Avro binary gzip, it will go and do the Avro binary encoding, and it will zip it, and then we'll go and zip it. And every class that is being generated here does this. And then, so that's the data pieces. All the data pieces that are being generated have tests that go with them. They're also auto-generated. And they will also go and have a test instance that they're generating here automatically so that they can be used in other tests. And then here's the Kafka producer, and the Kafka producer that is has a producer helper, and then it has an event factory, and the event factory is basically what you use to go and create your events. You have a create print job started message, and then you basically just fill in your data, and you pass in the parameters. See here, tenant ID and device ID. Those parameters are actually determined by the placeholders you have in your URI templates. So if you have attributes that you have defined here, and you have these placeholders, then those placeholders turn into parameters in these helper methods. So in the end, what you get is, and that's something you can go and see in the sample, in the test that's built into this. You basically go and create your test data, and then you simply call your send operation, and you're only dealing with your business data and your business arguments, and sometimes you have to go and supply an external a context value, but otherwise how this is packaged into a cloud event, how this is being sent to Kafka in particular, and all these things, that's all completely automatic. You don't need to worry about this. And so there's a generally patternized approach to all these senders, so that they're all making this easy for you to do this. So this is what so this is all the C# bit. And then if I go and let's go here, if I can go also do this from the command line. So this is kind of for WatchCam project. There's a Kafka producer now for Python. Let's go and create that one. So here, you get the same thing in Python. And again, you get a data class. The data class is can self-serialize. It has a 2-byte array. It knows how to do the zipping and the avro pieces if you want to. So to and from data, it's compatible with the data class Python feature, and that will go and also have a producer, and the producer is basically initialize that with a Kafka producer. So this is kind of using the Confluent libraries. So you basically just pass in a Kafka producer. You give it the topic, and then you can go and give it the content mode for whether you want to have structured or binary cloud events. And then again, you go and create your objects, and then you just pass them in, and all the details of how to create a cloud event is handled for you. And of course, all of this generated code leans directly on the classes that we have in our own SDKs. So this is kind of layering on top of the work that we've done in the Cloud Event SDKs, and that's true for all the languages that we have where that's supported. And so I can go and now run the same thing for a Kafka producer, let's say in Java, as the last demo. Okay, so I did the same thing in Java. Go look at that. Source, main. Here's my event factory that's generating the events. Basically, this is how you create these producer records for the Java SDK, and then this is the producer helper, and then here's the data objects. Again, they have the same qualities, the same characteristics as all the other ones, just in a different language, and with details, and all the details are all kind of feel natural, kind of in the respective languages. So that is the external trick. Let me just go and show you, because kind of we're here amongst friends, and I just want to show you kind of the details of this a bit. If you are in this CodeGen repo, the most interesting part is in XRCG's templates, because in templates you can actually find all these project templates. And the way how I've done this is there is literally nothing hard-coded in the core code generator. This is all, the input is an X registry document, and the output, and it basically just goes, and there's a loader which goes and pulls in the data and then makes sure that it collects all the dependencies that exist in that file that are cross-referenced. So it does that work, and it presents a document to the template resolver. But then from there, if you want to go and create, let's go and look at something that we have already seen. So I'm going to go and do the Kafka producer for C#. There is a README, and then it goes through the root message groups and the root and the endpoints, and it checks. It only generates the section if there are endpoints, and then it goes for each endpoint. So it's if you're familiar with the spec, it's actually not that crazy. It goes and creates a solution file. It goes and creates the producer file, and you can see that's kind of, and then there's some utilities that are also inside this project. The utilities all sit in common, and so you can go and create basically these templates for all languages. And turns out that Copilot is actually pretty good at understanding that sort of a macro model, because I've used Jinja 2, which is a super popular templating language. And I've written a bunch of extensions for Jinja, like 50 or so, that do things like Pascal. So it goes and Pascal cases it. And then there's Snake. And then there's um, uh, no, I'm losing it. Pascal, Snake, and the other
Give
one.
up.
Huh?
Give up case.
Yeah. A camel case. Camel. Kebab, I might have kebab too. But kebab is very rare as a thing. And then I have a bunch of extra options. I can go and strip a namespace from an expression. I can concatenate namespaces. I can selectively lowercase things. I can uppercase things. There's all kinds of things that are necessary to go and address all the various languages that we have here. So it is. I mean, it's a bit of a hill to climb. But it's possible to basically write. So far, I haven't seen anything I can't do with that thing. You see that the file names here are kind of prefixed, or there's placeholders in them, so they get processed by the engine. So, for instance, this goes into the root directory, because by default the files go into the project directory, so you can go and place stuff at the root, which is then commonly shared with data. And there's some other cases where I have some special expressions in here, like I can lowercase the project names, etc. I can all do that in expressions that sit kind of in the file name. So that monstrous thing is save for a few errors in the tests, mostly there to for other people to go and start joining the fun. It's not done. And all the templates probably need a review by folks, but I am very confident in the core engine here to do what we need to do. And ultimately, here's a list of templates that exist. A little bit further down. So I have Python, consumers, producers. There's actually more now. I need to go and update that section. There's TypeScript. I have OpenAPI. I can go and produce async API consumer and producer documents from our X registry message definitions and endpoints. I can go and create OpenAPI too. Then there's various Java producers and consumers, and several for C#. I now have a Kafka producer and consumer for Go. And that's already checked in. It's not yet in the documentation. These are all things that I'm going to go and fix in the next couple of days. So much for a quick view through the bucket of gifts that I brought. And I'm very excited specifically about the code generation capabilities, because I think those are, speaking personally, this is kind of what I came for, right? It's I think we have speaking as a messenger, we have a pretty good foundation for creating, for declaring endpoints, declaring message definitions, declaring schemas, and bringing it all together. And then this code generator is effectively tapping into this metadata model, and now it goes and generates whatever client you want for mostly whatever language you want, so that you can go and create type safe pipelines. As an example of this, that's the last thing we're going to show. I have a project that's my project called Real-Time Sources, and that is a set of effectively container bridges from various public data sources into Kafka or Event Hubs or Fabric event streams. The newest that I added this week is Blue Sky. And so this Blue Sky container takes the fire hose of Blue Sky and basically pipes it into Kafka or event streams or Fabric. And what that does is it basically has this Blue Sky bridge. That's this program which basically talks to the Blue Sky Firehose and then kind of produces events out of it. And the producer that's being used here this year, that is all completely co-generated by our CodeGen tool. And the foundation for that is this XReg file, which is a definition of the Blue Sky information model, kind of expressed in Avro schema, and then put into this XReg document. And from there, I'm generating all the clients. And then I have some other tooling that kind of goes and also extracts from that XReg tool the schemas and then converts them into database tables, etc.
So Clemens, in the chat, Yardis had a bunch of questions where I think they're mainly related to the CodeGen stuff. I'm not 100% sure. Yardis, you want to ask them your questions?
Yeah, it's primarily around the CodeGen if they're gonna be efficient or whatever. But like, it's like, does the CodeGen support batching? How can I pass like extra headers or metadata or whatever, right? One of those providers that you want to pass extra stuff to make a point, open telemetry, traces, headers. And the last one is like maybe deterministic IDs, right? Like I have an event source system where I have my own ID. I want to make sure guarantee that it doesn't get duplicate. If the system supports this, or most likely I want to control the ID of the things.
So the great thing about this model, the template driven model, is you can make your own templates. So you can if you want to go in and say every method that I go and generate needs to have an extra parameter, you can modify the template and do it. And
Right.
if you if you take so the principle that I've been trying to apply here is to have as few dependencies in these templates as possible. So not to, like, I can't avoid having a particular client, right? If a protocol client. So I need to go and pick whatever the Confluent client for Kafka for certain cases, and I'm picking the Proton J client for AMQP in some cases, and I'm picking the Eclipse Paho client for MQTT. I got to go and pick a favorite on that front. If you want to have, if you want to go and set headers, if you want to send, for instance, a certain property in for your message, the way you do this is you actually go and declare that property in the protocol section in the X registry declaration, and put a URI template placeholder in that header. And when you do this, that header automatically becomes an argument in the call. So if you need to send extra headers, and those extra headers usually come from the application, the way how you do this is you declare the need for it in your X registry metadata file, and then, or in the registry, and then the code generator will need this and will go and generate in that function. It will go and generate an argument for you. So if you want to go and pass, let's say, an open telemetry header, you can go and declare the open telemetry attribute that we actually have an extension for in Cloud Events. You can declare this, and you make the type URI template, and then you make the value of it in curly braces, whatever. I forgot what the names are, right? Source context or whatever, right? And then that source context field will show up as a parameter that you can go and pass in. So this is kind of pre-built. But if you want to go and modify the template and say, I want to go and pass context information from my environment into the constructor and then use that, it's totally possible to go and create another template, basically a fork of an existing template, and then just go and add it. And I think it's absolutely reasonable to go and add that template then into the official set of templates.
Yeah, that is Well, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, and for me, like I would like to understand like what would you like to happen when it
Yeah,
comes to alignment versus no, go ahead and do everything by yourself or continue improving the between quote unquote like official generators to allow more parameters in order to convey into some of these configurations.
this so far this has been a sculpting project. This is kind of where this I have been working on this for like 2 years or 2.5, and this has changed shape for a while until it stopped changing shape like half a year ago or so. And now I'm at the point where I think this has settled so far that I'm like, this is probably good enough for other people to start working with me on, especially on the templates. So I would very much welcome first PRs and then reviews and critiques on the templates. And this the every the fixes that I'm currently making, the pull requests that are still open, are cases where the tests are not complete, where the tests are not doing this full run through. Every template that I have, pretty much everything that I have, is having a. You're still looking at it. When I generate these things, let's go and take a look at one of the ones that I've generated. Do I still have that open? I don't. Hang on. Let's go and take a look at this one again. So I said there is as a test, and each of these tests is actually setting up with test containers, a real server, and then goes and does an end-to-end test against them. So every time you go and generate one of those things, you effectively get a full SDK, right? And the full SDK comes with unit tests and an integration test that makes sure that those things actually work. So that's kind of the standard that I'm setting here, so that they are not toys, and they're not as, if you look at the open API tooling, even as popular as that is, right? They generate a file with you and then for you, and then whether that file works or not is kind of YOLO. And I didn't want to do this. So all of these things, when you go and generate them, they will go and compile right out of the box, and they're usable out of the box, and they come with tests where you can go and verify that it actually does the work that it's promising to do. So it's quite the hill, and I'm very much welcoming help in making sure that all of those things are actually useful.
Yeah, last like, do you have anything around the async API spec? I haven't used it that often, but like it's becoming a little bit popular over time.
If you want to have my honest, sorry, I showed this in the wrong window, but here's the test. If you want to have my honest opinion, my personal honest opinion about it is, I'm not too enthused by async API, because I think it's not solving a problem that I find interesting. Mostly because it's an API. The Postman folks created a request response abstraction over queues. And that's mostly geared towards that because it's an offshoot of OpenAPI. And it's not capable of describing, for instance, what we do here with the X registry basics of endpoints. You cannot describe the input and the output of a queue. Right? There's always a perspective of a client talking to a thing, but you can only go and describe one hop. But you can't describe kind of the characteristic of a queue or a topic that has you can't describe the ins and the outs, and that's a basic thing that we can do. And I think the next phase here for our project, it's, at least that's something that I would like to pursue, and I hope that this is the venue for it, is that to think about what is the contract model that we layer on top of this. Right now, we know how to format channels, and I would then like to have something that's a bit more sophisticated in terms of a contract model. I want to be able to go and formally define effectively a sequence diagram for messaging, where you have roles, and then you define who in which role can go and send messages to whom. Because if we think that agentic AI is a thing that's effectively, service-oriented architecture in 2025, but with partially non-deterministic actors in the middle, then we need to go and describe, here are the communication options that the agents can take, right? And if they go and take those communication options, right, what is the next step beyond that? What can the agent expect to happen when they go and take that route? And I think for that, you need to be able to go and declare one of those larger communication contexts, so that the agents understand those. And that is where I think async API has not enough coverage. And so right now, it's effectively, we have laid the groundwork with X registry, with the elements that we have. And I think there's a whole layer on top that I'm interested in adding. And I also talked to some other people about this already, who are also similarly interested. So summary of this is what I brought. Go take a look at those new repos. As said, the CodeGen repo is still going to have a little bit of churn in the next couple of days. I'm also getting active help from Copilot on it. I am completely unashamed because it's actually doing a pretty good job on it. And so tomorrow, as soon as you see a new tag coming out, version tag coming out, which is not going to be 1.0, but it's going to be probably 0.14, then you will also get packages for VS Code as an extension, and you're going to get a package for Python that you can simply install and then go and run.
Okay.
But you can, if you follow the documentation, there's already a published Docker container that makes it super easy to run it.
Cool. Okay, technically we're right at time.
Good.
Thank you, Clemens, for all that. Any last quick questions for Clemens or comments? Okay. In that case, I believe I have everybody for the agenda or for the attendee list. Just a reminder, we will not have a call next week. And Klaus and Clemens, watch for a ping for me, because there's a very good possibility I will not be able to make the call tomorrow. So you guys can obviously meet if you want, but I'm probably not going to make it. I'm helping my son do something, and I don't know what his plans are. He's not as anal as me, so I have no idea what he's doing. But there's a very good possibility he will ping me and have me do something, but I won't be able to make the call. But I'll ping you, let you know.
That's all right. Okay.
Okay.
So happy holidays to
Yes.
Americans.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll talk in 2 weeks.